Right, hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new episode of The Golfer's Guide, the show where I answer your guys' questions that you pose to me over my social media platforms. If you don't already as well, follow them down here and then you will get your questions asked. This week we were talking about fairway woods, so let's get stuck in and answer some of your questions. First one comes from Crackers313. How does changing the loft on adjustable woods open or close the face, e.g. 14 loft up 1.5 to 17, and how does it affect putting more clubs into your bag? Well, basically what we have like nowadays is that changeable loft. All we've got to think of is something called face plane tilt. When we add loft to a club, basically what happens is this, where the face would do this. So we would start to see that the middle of it would actually point up and left. So it would, when you add loft, you close it and it goes up. So depending on that plus or minus, however your club is fit with those, we would see that the face plane tilt would change. When we open it, we would see that the face would do something like this a little bit more when we minus the loft off it. So when we take loft off, we are seeing that the face would open as we go through. So if you're someone who's a slicer of the golf ball, adding a little bit more loft is not only going to increase that backspin, but also going to close the face a little bit more. Okay, so Neil_79, is a Wilson D7 as good as a Ping 400 3-wood for a high handicapper? There is also another question about the D700 from Andy Tagg. Would love to see your thoughts on it. Okay, so D7 versus the Ping 400. On that scale, it's more sort of brand appeal. Ping probably spend a bit more money on marketing than Wilson do, but Wilson staff make some fantastic clubs, and I probably think they're one of the most underrated manufacturers in the golfing space. Like I say, comparisons in Ping and the D7, I've not actually hit the D7 wood yet, so it's something I would probably need to do, and I do plan on doing some new series next year where I will be looking at products and telling them who they're aimed for, not necessarily a straight up review, but telling you who that product will be aimed for. Let's get into the next question. So Mark Hodgson 999, thinking of ditching the 3-wood so I can gain my TMB 3 iron and hybrid G410. Prefer the iron off tight lies, only use 3-wood max twice around. That's totally up to you. What I would say is when you are selecting clubs for your bag, you've got to look at the makeup of it. Is it something that when you're putting it in the bag, it's going to be regularly used? So for me, I do generally use the 3-wood going into a longer par 5, or I do quite like to hit it off some par 4s where I'm maybe not confident with the driver. I think it's a good club to fall back on when I'm not too confident with that driver. But for you, Mark, that might be that 3 iron or it might be that hybrid. So totally up to you, your set makeup. But what I would say is put things in for the right choices. Don't just have them there because, you know, everyone has a 3-wood. If you use the hybrid more, use the hybrid more. Okay, so Ben's Wanks asks, how does ball placement change compared to a driver or irons? Now, what we would see for the irons, let's say a 8 iron for instance, if I was playing my 8 iron, it would be pretty close to the centre of my stance. So if I had my 3-wood out and I was playing it from where I would generally play my 8 iron, what I would see is that I'm really de-lofting it now because of my handle being pushed forwards and the club head going back to the middle of my stance. So basically what's happening is I'm taking the loft off this 3-wood, so with it being 15, it would actually go down to somewhere near an 8 or a 9 degree club. Again, if I was playing it where I would play my driver just in line with my lead toe, what I would see is that I might actually just start to get it a little bit too thin, because the big thing that we need to do when we are playing a fairway wood, especially off tight turf, off a fairway, is try and take a divot. So I'm actually looking for the club to bottom out after the golf ball here. I'm not looking to try and pick it off the surface. I'm looking for a little divot there. So what I would try and do is get it just about an inch behind my lead heel, and then as I make my swing, I'm going to move into it and take that little divot just like so. Okay, just a little bit clippy there, but just got a slight graze on the turf and the ball got up away nicely. If I was trying to pick that off too cleanly, I probably would have topped that golf ball. Okay, so one final question. Danny Kelleher asks, I'm playing off 24 at the moment and I've taken my 3-wood out my bag because I'm hitting it just as far as my hybrid. Don't know why. Now what we've got to understand with woods especially, we need to impart a certain amount of ball speed to actually get the golf ball travelling up and keeping it airborne. If that ball isn't coming out with enough speed and at the right launch angle, it would flop basically. We would see it drop out of the air very quickly. So you might find that, and you might find that with your long irons as well. It might be something where your 7-iron is going just as long, your 5-iron goes as long as your 7-iron. And that's all down to that speed that there's coming out of the ball and the launch we're getting. So when we've got something like a 3-wood or a 5-wood or whatever it may be, we need to make sure we've got the right launch angle and we need to see that we're getting the right ball speed. So from there, we'd want to see that we're getting the middle of the club, and we also want to be impacting it at the right angle. So maybe check that ball position, Danny. You might have it too far back in your stance, which means it isn't getting that launch up in the air. Also check your strike. Are you actually getting a pretty centered strike as you're going through? And then third and finally, we need some speed down at the golf ball. We want to imagine that as we're coming through, we're really letting that club head pass through. When you get into a longer club, we've actually got to give it a little bit more. And with, you know, beginners or higher handicappers, sometimes we haven't got the belief and the sort of comfortability factor to actually swing it a little bit harder. So that's where we don't see the ball going as far. But it might be something, Danny, where you try maybe a 4-wood or a 5-wood and you'd see that that would go 15-20 yards longer than your hybrid. It doesn't necessarily have to be a 3-wood. Maybe when the time's right and your skill set's right, you can get it back in the bag. But I would go and see a PGA pro, get some advice on it as to how you're going to hit that 3-wood better and maybe get it back in the bag. Guys, if I haven't answered your question, check on Instagram and I will answer them there for you. As always, do remember to follow me on the links below because I post these questions on Instagram and my Facebook, and you need to ask me the questions there to feature in the show. I hope you've enjoyed this golfer's guide this week. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next episode.